Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. Today we are talking about hiding behind a mask. Welcome to the Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can sparkle just a little bit brighter each and every day. If what you hear speaks to your soul, go ahead and give us a rating and a review in iTunes. You can also find us on SoundCloud and Stitcher. And hey, if there's somebody in your life that you think would enjoy this podcast, go ahead and share it with them. Now, I wanted to say a few words about this podcast before I brought Nick on. And what's pretty cool is that when Nick and I talked about doing this podcast and, mentioning the whole mask and wearing masks and what this means to people, we went back to two isms that we used when we started our company 4 years ago. And one of those is radical authenticity. So you can hashtag that. And the other one is courageous vulnerability. And we're recording this episode on Sunday, right before election. And I think it's very appropriate that this episode is recorded now and holds the energy past, because by the time you listen to it, our presidential election will have been finalized and we have a new president. And really the message will be to speak your truth, be honest, and let go of the mask. So I'm going to bring Nick on so we can dive in how to do that. Well, hey, Nick.
Hey, Kisma.
What's going on there? You got a mask on today?
No, I do not. I've mostly given those up. I think they just get a little heavy and a little bit much.
Yeah.
So to be walking around with.
It does. Whenever we walk around with something that isn't ours, it feels heavy, and definitely a mask is not something that is true to ourselves. So it's not only heavy, it's going to feel confusing and definitely cause some chaotic energy.
Yeah, absolutely. It just causes all kinds of mixed signals and all kinds of problems. And really, I just think distorts things at a very fundamental level,
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about authenticity a lot. And it's funny that you mentioned that, here's a little train of truth coming back to us. When we first started, I remember sitting on the couch in our little apartment in Point Loma.
Yeah, down by the airport.
And downloading the isms, radical authenticity, courageous vulnerability, and ruthless honesty.
Yeah, those, and we have held pretty much true to those.
They've been a guiding, really kind of a guiding light, and something to always come back to. You don't always recognize those moments when they're happening of like, oh, this is just kind of cool. Like we were looking for something for our marketing or whatever, and they turned out to be something really so much greater than that. Like something that I think really guided me. I can only speak for myself. Like really guided me to stay true to myself, even when I was confused or lost or just not really sure or feeling, insecure and not confident or something like that. It's like, just come back to these simple things,
right?
And everything else will be so much easier. So the conversation today really about authenticity and vulnerability and getting beyond some of the masks that we tend to wear.
Right. Well, I want to hear from you what you feel like some of the masks are you've worn. But I guess basically, when we talk about hiding behind a mask, we're talking about putting a filter in front of our truth. It's sort of like filtering our soul, filtering our belief, our truth. And that just isn't going to work. If a human wants to thrive in the world, if they want to move from their life and soul purpose, if they want to make a difference, if they just freaking want to be aligned, seeing and talking and thinking and all those things from a filter of a mask just isn't going to work really well.
Well, we already have enough filters and masks to our divine nature.
Right.
There's already enough layers, and spirituality, for what anybody thinks, is not an additive practice. It's not like you add something more to get to your infinite nature. It's really about paring away and subtracting all of the limiting beliefs and misperceptions and distractions that keep us from really embodying that.
Oh, that's so good. So basically, there is a truth. There's a core truth in each of you and each of us. And we are looking to peel away They say oftentimes it's like an onion, peel away the layers to get to that core truth. And so if there's a mask, it's just one more layer of something to peel away and makes everything more difficult.
Well, it's like not even your real personality.
Right.
So you already have a personality, which is which at its best is an expression of your divine nature. When you're truly congruent and truly aligned, it's an expression of your divine nature. And that personality is going to be unique no matter what. Like, absolutely, you're going to have a unique personality. But when you start to manipulate that so that you can be seen in a certain way or perceived in a certain way in the world, well, you're just adding another layer onto that, another layer of confusion.
Right.
So it gets really, it just gets really confusing for
really
you
does.
and for everybody. Some people wear those for so long. It's like, I know I did, like you just can't even remember who you really are.
So what's one of the masks that you remember wearing?
That's a good question. I think there's one of the ones that really comes out to me is like the mask of I got this and everything's okay.
Oh, what would you call that? Like the need to be right mask?
It definitely has something to do with the need to be right. Like, absolutely. But I'm not sure I call it that. Other than I would just say like the fine mask.
The fine. I'm fine. It's
I'm
fine.
fine.
It's fine. I got this. I got this mask.
Yeah.
I got this mask.
That one's really common, while inside, I could tell that there were things that just really were totally incongruent in my life. The way that I was, the relationship that I was in at the time, the way that I was managing that or being in that, I think is a better way to put it. The way that I was treating myself.
All that pot you were smoking.
All that pot I was smoking. It was a fair amount, it was not insignificant. And trying to do that and also live, a meaningful life, a spiritual life, an aligned life. There is a total disconnect in those things. And so I would wear the mask of, it's fine, I got this, so that nobody would really probe too deeply below the surface.
Right.
There,
And the sad thing about that mask, I got this mask or I got it mask, is that it prevents people from really looking at something that could elevate their, whether you want to say consciousness, spirituality, way of being, way of doing or having, is when you're blinding yourself with, I got it, it's all good. There's a lack of depth in whatever that practice is in one's life. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. I would say that it's like you don't get to share your real gifts because you're too busy just pretending that everything's just fine the way it is.
Yeah, and you don't get to really understand failures and how those can elevate you, and you don't get to look at what needs to change or shift or grow or transform because you're just stuck in this box of I got this, don't touch it, and everyone leave me alone. It's really heartbreaking to me when I see people come to us like that. They're looking at a training or coaching or whatever, and they're so sure they got it, but they know deep down inside they don't.
Right.
And when they decide not to take that next step, it's painful, but that's their choice. And it's going to be another karmic wheel and karmic loop of believing that they got this. And then the layers and layers of frustration will just build.
Exactly. It builds up more and more and more. And it is kind of sad. But, at the same time, it's like, these are the cycles that I've been through myself. I've certainly done it myself. I've got it, trying to get to that next place. But you really do cut yourself off from the opportunities that are there and the people and the help and the opportunities that are right in front of your face.
Right.
Because you're like, nope, I got it. I'm good.
Yeah,
So
totally.
it's that fine. It's a return to fine. It's that mask that says that you keep enrolling yourself in the need to be fine.
Oh, man, and the universe isn't fine. The universe is like magnificent and brilliant and excellent. And that's what we are. Our organic divine nature is perfection. So don't settle for fine. Now, there's another mask I want to talk about, which I feel is really sort of tied in, but moving over into the spiritual realm. When I'm just going to go out there and say it, I notice a lot of people in spiritual communities can be really blissed out and peace, man, and love, and I got this, and so-and-so's been talking to me at night, and from the stars and this and that. But then their money's a mess, their relationships are a mess, they're breaking inside. what's going on there? Because to me, spirituality is not like a set religion. It's this depth of examination of our soul and our way of living. So when someone's posturing that they're all blissed out, but they're not, that's a heavy mask to bear.
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's the heaviest one, but I would say that it's the one that's glued on the tightest.
Oh, right. It's like a massive protection. I mean, I suppose all the masks are a means of protection from something, but
yeah. So it might even appear lighter to them because, we were just talking about this, how spirituality is the worst attachment that you can have.
It is the darkest, the worst. Yes.
When you're attached to your spiritual practices or your spiritual beliefs, that is like the worst, so that's why that one gets so tightly attached, is because, who's going to tell you that this thing that you found, right? If you found a sense of spirituality, a new sense of self, you will experience a sense of joy and a sense of ease that you've not experienced before in your life.
Yes.
You just will. And it'll be terrifying in a certain way because it's like, oh, you're kind of like looking at all the things that you're leaving behind and the way that you used to do things, but it'll also be so exciting and so fresh and so light because you actually get a modicum of happiness and joy where there was none. And what happens is the mind gets addicted to that state, that spiritual state. And that's what glues that mask on. And so what do? Well, then you go and you study more and more spirituality and you learn more and more stuff. And what you learn through those principles is how you're supposed to be. And and people think that they can just go be that like instantly.
I think I'll go meditate for an hour. No, it's not going to work.
Right, but why? Or that, and then somehow what happens is then the flip side of that is then it's not okay to be angry.
Right, or it's not okay to have emotions, or it's not okay to disagree or have a argument with somebody,
or to get hurt.
Yeah,
I think sometimes people just, oh, I'm fine. Like, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. I'm good. Comes back to that fine mask, like another layer of that. But it's like, that's that deeper one of like, I'm supposed to be this certain way. This is what spirituality looks like. And this is how I'm going to wear that in the world.
Yeah.
And so you're not allowed to get angry, show emotion, anything other than love, and bliss and everything like that. You don't get to show the quote unquote negative side of that, which is just so natural to our human experience.
Right. So let me ask a question. Would it be that the spiritual mask as well, people are attached to the non-essentials? I know we've had conversations about the non-essentials of spirituality. It might be your incense, your mala beads, the robes, the dreadlocks, the tattoos, church, temple, whatever. All of these things, except the dreadlocks for me, I don't know. I don't have any tattoos, but for some people, like all these things feel spiritual. They're like reminders, our little statue of Buddha up there that we got in LA, coming from Indonesia, but these are non-essentials.
Yeah.
So we use them to help propel the path, but if we're attached to them, we're missing the real piece. We're wearing a false mask of spirituality.
Yes. What happens is you make it about the thing.
Which are still external substances.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not the thing. None of those things are the thing.
What is the thing?
Go chant, like that's not the thing. But I'm just saying, like, if you like to chant, go chant. That's awesome. But the spirituality isn't in the chant. The chant is reminding you of who you really are and how to get back home. It's not in the ritual. It's not in the prayer. It's not in the meditation. It's not in the idols, that we hold. There's a Gouda. There's a Gouda. Not a Gouda, although fine cheese. A Buddha and a Ganesha, right here on my desk. They're reminders for me.
Right.
But he symbolized, Ganesh symbolizes that breaking through of obstacles, right? But I can't just I can't count on Ganesh to just, solve all my problems.
Right.
Right. It's not the thing. And none of these things are the thing. The thing is, they're just reminders to point you back home.
Back home. Wow. So, and back home is the elimination of masks that are filters that are unnecessary. And I think another mask that I've seen a lot, and certainly I wore when I was a musician is the perfection mask.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what was yours?
Yeah,
Like,
I think perfection, I got to be perfect. I got to play perfect. I got to just be freaking perfect all over the place. And this is really interesting to me because full circle around, years of wearing that and having it cause like a lot of anxiety internally. But I realize there's nothing wrong with perfection. We are perfect. The thing is, we will go through little ups and downs and all arounds of imperfection, which simply heightens our perfection more. So perfection is removing the mask, going through life's experiences, growing from them, managing yourself, and allowing that divine perfection to really shine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really beautiful way to put it. And I think that's such a good point of how we have made let me put it this way, when we get into this kind of spiritual conversation about it, because so many people have beat the crap out of themselves with the ideal of perfection and what that is for so long, they wind up wearing that mask. And then what they do is they take it off and then they make it wrong.
Oh, yes.
It's like that was wrong and bad. Well, it's like, well, I don't know that I would go that far. I would say it was destructive and it was misdirected.
Yes.
But you bring up such a beautiful point of that we are perfect. And there's nothing wrong with striving for excellence.
Right.
Right. Really and truly holding that ideal of perfection and striving towards that. Right. There's nothing wrong with that. If you use it to beat the crap out of yourself, that's a problem. That's going to cause you problems. But if you just hold the ideal of perfected action, of real and true excellence in what you do, that is not a problem.
Yeah, mastery. Mastery is awesome. But to get to mastery, there's a lot of trials and there's a lot of failures, perhaps. Perhaps there's less for some people than others, and that's fine. But always lifting up to the ideal. It's like we've talked about ideal a lot, and I think that perfection is the ideal.
Yeah. I'd agree. I agree.
So what can people do to drop the mask? Because let's face it, if someone's used to wearing that mask of, I got it, or it's fine, or I got to be perfect, or I'm really blissed out, or maybe the mask of, I'm the super high achiever, successful person. There's so many, where does one start to peel that off?
That's an awesome question. I wish I had a really, really simple answer for you.
Take a pill.
Yeah, take a pill. The red pill. I know I tried that too. As a matter of fact, that did not work. I can tell you that I see a lot of people try to do this in some pretty bizarre ways. I saw a person lay down on the floor of a coffee shop for a certain amount of time to overcome a fear of what people would think, right? Which is another way of trying to take off. I know, right? And I don't, it's like, okay,
whatever.
I get it.
Yeah.
That was something that seemed relevant to you, but it's not the thing. That's really not going to get you to your answer.
Right.
This is where, if there is a simple answer, in my mind, the simple answer to this is really and truly the development of the intellect.
Yes. Because then with the intellect, you can begin to discern what is the mask and what is not the mask. Exactly.
And that's the key piece of it's really determining what are those non-essentials, and we're talking about the non-essentials of your personality as well. And I know that might sound kind of weird, but really and truly, it's the non-essentials of our personality that we're paring away so that your brilliance can shine. That's the cool part. You have all this brilliance inside, but when it's hidden with a mask, you can't. So the development of the intellect, and what I mean by that more than anything is the ability to be truly objective towards yourself and your own personality. That's what the intellect does. And there's a gross intellect that discerns in the world, and there's a subtle intellect that discerns within yourself. And by and large, it is the subtle intellect that is the one that requires the most development.
That's pretty, I mean, let's just dial it in. That's pretty much the diamond of living, is when a human can look at themselves and discern what is real and what is not real, what's their true divine personality, as opposed to what are the years and lifetimes of layers and beliefs and limitations. When a human can discern that, they've got it made. Then there's the absence, like when Nick, when you mentioned objectivity, right? So objectivity is just being able to be from that, looking at life from that balcony, looking at your life from that balcony, just like a witness, just like you're watching a movie. So that objectivity means there's an absence of entanglement, there's an absence of attachment, and there's definitely an absence of agitation of the mind. And agitation of the mind is the suffering that most people are experiencing on this planet. It's really not a lack of money. It's not being overweight. It's not losing sleep. It's an agitation of the mind that then guides people to do whatever they're going to do to be in lack mentality or overweight or whatever. Would that make sense?
What I understand is that, and I think I
just went on a rant,
the little Kisma rant. It was like a mini rant. It wasn't like a big, full on. But what I understood is that it's really those things are like, if you're overweight, for example, like let's say that, you're really struggling with your weight or your health. That's not the real problem. It's the hiding behind that has prevented you from really connecting with your divinity and your true self.
Yes.
And then from there, it's like, well, then we find all these really weird ways to try to get out of that, or try to feel better about that, or try to do something to change our state or numb out so that we don't have to deal with that, which is what I did. That's totally what I did.
Most of us have at some point.
That was it for me, is like, I was just seeing, on a certain level, just massive incongruency, and then wanting to numb out from that in some way, because I just didn't have any answers and I didn't know what to do with that.
Right.
So that was a really painful place to be.
Right. So the intellect is key. Now I'm just going to swing back a little bit, because we'll dive, if you've been listening to our podcast, we bring up intellect and mind a lot, but I want to talk about why. So underneath the wanting to remove your masks to come from a more true, free space, there's a why. And so I believe if everyone taps into that, well, gosh, what would it be like if I was simply just more free to be me? What would it be like if I didn't have fear of what other people thought? What would it be like if I did every single day what I wanted to do in terms of living my life and building my project or my business or how I am at work or with my family? That is freedom. And if you can tap into that, or if there's something else with you, that allows you to have this inspiration for, okay, now I'm going to start developing my intellect, which means what? You're going to examine how you are, how you think, how you talk, how you are around people, and to really direct that gaze inward. Would that be pretty much what you're thinking there, Nick?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. And I think it'd be really worthwhile for us to open up this conversation about freedom a little bit. I think because I've seen people who go for the freedom and then they get lost. Like, I'm just so free. Like, I don't even know what to do with my free, it's just really kind of weird sense of freedom where they don't even know what to do with that or how to operate within that. I haven't seen that too often, but I have seen that a couple times, and it's pretty weird. But when we talk about freedom, this is why you see people, though, trying to create that in a false way. And what I mean by that is where you'll say, well, take off your mask, and we'll say this, just take off your mask, just be who you are. And they're like, I am who I am, and I don't care what other people think. And if somebody thinks something like that about me, they can F off and like whatever. And it's like, well, wait a second, like, how free are you? Because you're still agitated by the fact that somebody thinks a certain way about you, and you've just flipped over to the other side of that polarity and said, F you, I don't care.
So wait, so what you're saying is, if someone is already thinking about what someone else thinks, they're wearing the mask. They have not released the mask.
They're wearing, I don't know what I'd call that one, maybe the FU mask, It's the other side of the equation that is basically saying, I don't care what you think, I don't care, screw you if you think that or whatever, and I'm just going to be who I'm going to be. And then they go out into the world and they use that as permission to be a total a-hole.
Right.
Right. And this is just who I am. Like, no, like your divine nature is not to be an asshole. It's just not, you know?
It might be a layer of the personality, but the divine nature is not.
Yeah, that is not. If you're really going to think about that one, and let's put it in terms that a 5-year-old can understand. Do you really think that's your best self?
You're right.
Are you being your best self when you're out there just telling people what for and being rude about it? Like, really,
Well, but it comes down to when there is an agitation of the mind, you're not free, and chances are there's some kind of mask still being worn. There hasn't been an alignment with your truth. There hasn't been this fearlessness of just stepping out and being, I'm good. And whatever anybody thinks, that's cool. Like, I'm not going to judge them, whatever, it's cool. Like you're so in, we call it the divine success track with our clients. You're like right aligned there.
And you have to be able to do that to be successful in anything that you do, really, but especially in business, because a small business is going to be centered around you. Like no matter if you put yourself behind a product or whatever, it's still your energy at the center of that business, and your authenticity definitely really, really matters.
Right.
Because if you're hiding from those things in your life, if you're putting on a mask so that everybody will think you're successful and you got it together and everything's just fine, you're actually going to be hiding from clients. You're going to be hiding from opportunities. Like people, it's funny that it actually shows up so literally, is that people literally can't see you when you're wearing a mask.
No. Mm-mm.
And it's not just like, oh, they can't see who you really are. It's like you disappear from their awareness.
Right. They might not even be able to hear you.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And that's something too, like masks. Okay. We know, right. We're describing what it does to us when we wear a mask, but look at the people that are wanting to communicate or interact with us or live with us or work with us. If there's a mask, they might not only not see you, they might not hear you, they might not be able to read what you write because the frequencies are so out of alignment. So oftentimes people get frustrated because they're like, no one's paying attention to me. I'm not being seen. I'm not being heard. Are you being your truth? Are you being real? Because if you're being real, the right people that are of your frequency line, right, that are operating around the same frequency, they will hear you and they will see you.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be 50 million people.
It does not.
Right off the bat. It can just be a few people, and that's awesome.
Okay.
But you see that a lot, and I definitely have heard, that complaint before of, I'm doing the social media, I'm posting on Facebook and nobody's paying any attention. And it's like, then you go back and look at what they posted and it's just so incongruent with who they are, because they're trying to, and I know I used to do this, like, just trying to make it be like, oh, it needs to be all businessy because it's a business, and like whatever. It's like, be you, like you're your business. And, I don't know, in a certain way, I kind of feel like we've maybe lost some of the formality.
Yeah.
It was kind of appreciated. Like there was a respect and a decorum of how people dealt with one another. And I feel like that some of that's been lost. But I feel like the gain on the upside is that people really have an opportunity to really be true to who they are,
right?
And to hold the highest standards. But it kind of comes at a cost, because then you do wind up with some people out there who are just like, who use it as an excuse to be an asshole.
Yes.
Right. And this is who I am or whatever. And it gets attention, but it doesn't really get to the truth of the matter. And yeah, it's a trade-off, but I wouldn't trade it. Like I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't have it any other way, so to speak.
Yeah. So let's circle back. Intellect, develop the intellect. What are a few things when we're really looking at how to release the mask, how to be more truthful, how to release the fear of what people think, or just being ultimately you, and developing the intellect? So any key things that people can do right now to tie that in together?
Well, I'll break it down in two ways. Your development of your intellect in the world first. Like that is your gross intellect. It observes and discerns in the world. And that's a really important piece that you can develop just by observing other human beings in your life, and really just it's always easier to see outside. You can observe somebody else's personality traits. You can observe their behaviors, their choices, their actions, their emotions, the way that they do life, and just really observe like well, what are their traits? Like, who is this? Like, what is their true nature? And what you're doing through that is you're developing the skill to do that for yourself.
Yeah,
because it's super hard. That's why we've always had, we found the very best teachers and mentors and paid a lot of money in order to have that in our lives, is because it's not necessarily that we couldn't do it. It's just that, man, it would have been so
there was a lot to peel
so
off.
much more painful. And I would say, and I would argue that I don't think I would ever have been able to do that on my own.
Right. It would have taken a long time and just, well, we have pretty lofty goals of where we want to be in our own personal growth, which is great. And everybody has their own ideal that they want to reach. But yeah, so pay attention.
Pay attention, right? And thanks for boiling that down to 2 words.
Pay attention.
Pay freaking attention. Pay attention to people. And then, then it's a quick little loop back around when, those people who agitate you in your life, like those are the best gifts because,
oh yeah,
and I know it's so cliche to say that, but it's really true, because then you have the opportunity to look at yourself immediately. Like when somebody does something kind of, weird or messed up or just that disturbs you in some way, you get to look at yourself and be like, wow, I wonder what that is in me that's getting so agitated.
Right. Oh yeah. It's such a great way to evolve.
And that brings you back to the self-inquiry, really and truly, that's the core of the practice, self-inquiry.
Yes.
So it's looking at all in different layers. Like people want the instant healing,
which is pretty cool.
I do. It's cool. And it's totally possible. Like that's the thing is it is really possible. Like that insight, that flash of insight happens in a moment. It really does.
But what led up to that moment?
Exactly. And I think they're committed to the instant healing rather than to the journey of healing.
Right.
It's like one insight to the next, and it's a constant unfolding and unwinding of all these weird little things that we've picked up through this life and through God knows, beyond. So that journey and really being committed to the self-inquiry throughout.
Exactly.
Which is tricky. Like who wants to sit down unless something is like just really horrible for you or really agitating? Like who wants to sit down and just be like, wow, like what's going on with me?
Oh, I love doing that.
Yeah, it's fun. Like it is kind of fun. But most people will not, it's like, get on with life. Like you want to get on with your life. You got other things to do. I don't want to sit around on a Saturday night and be thinking like, oh, like what's really tripping me up?
Yeah.
You go out and have some fun or whatever. But, and I think most people, but it's like, but a little bit goes a long ways, so
totally.
It's not like you have to spend all day doing that. Like you can do a significant amount in 30 minutes.
And I think the way for all of you listening to have this rapid growth with developing the intellect, being aware, taking notice, inquiry, is to do this really, really important thing, is to leave out judgment. Because the moment that you judge yourself or you're in like, oh man, I messed up, or you're resentful, you're angry, it just diminishes the whole process. So stay out of judgment and only in inquiry, because it's for that next moment, right? It's for the next moment, the next day, the next week, everything will elevate. And so you're just like, that's your purpose, to keep directing everything higher and higher so that the results that you get in your life are better and better.
Right. And you need a good intake of high frequency information. Like
That's
you need
true.
really,
That's
really
true.
good information that's clean and clear. And how I kind of think about that is like, we talked before about how spiritual practice is not, you're just constantly adding stuff on. So even if you've got like this super, awesome information, but you just keep filling yourself up with it, not doing anything with it, you're going to get congested in your thoughts, and you're going to, because none of that's embodied yet, right? And it does take time for that to quicken and to, for you to really actually practice it, to translate it into actual thoughts and words and actions, So when I think about that, it's like when you get a really quality piece of information, it's almost like a acid that burns away mistruth.
Yes.
So it's rather than filling yourself up with all this stuff, it's like taking that one tiny little piece and letting it burn away some of the things that just don't really serve anymore, those limiting beliefs or things like that. That's why spiritual study or studying spiritual texts is so important.
Right.
You know, it's not even that so that you learn anything.
Right.
You know, which is, I think, weird for a lot of people. They want to read the book and learn the concepts, which is cool. And I get that. But when you put it in the context of development and to really, in this conversation, to reveal your true identity, to reveal your brilliant light, it's not about adding stuff onto that. That study is to pare away
it really is.
all of the mistruths. And so, you know, this is something for me that I've been more keenly aware of.
Is this a vulnerable share?
No, it's not that vulnerable. It's just something that I've been noticing. I mean, I can get all vulnerable. You can ask me anything.
Courageous vulnerability.
I'm an open book, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Like anybody can ask me pretty much anything.
Yeah.
But no, it's that I've been noticing when I'm reading something, I open it up and I'm reading, and inevitably I get the message like right away. Like I'm kind of noticing that it was right in front of my face, and I just open up the book and like there it is, and I got it. And the old me would like go and keep reading because it's like I want to get to the next section or the next chapter or whatever. And it's like, dude, you got the thing. Like you got the thing. Right. Like you should just stop right there
and implement the thing.
Go live the thing.
Yeah,
and so like really think about that and give yourself an opportunity to actually see what that's all about. You know, so I've been more diligent about just you know, like seeing it, like I got the thing, yay, you know, and then just closing the book.
I love that.
Calling it good. But here's my little vulnerable share is then I get into the I get into a little bit of the judgment, because then I'm like, oh, you didn't finish the book.
Oh no.
You put, you know, but you know, have you ever got that where you're like, you start reading the book and it's like, I got to finish this book?
No, I don't have. I'm too old for that. I've read so much. And when I pick up a book and it's not due, it's like closed, done, goodbye.
I've been better about it, but there has been a part of me that's just like, oh, but you should finish the book. And it's like,
but now we scan our books before we read them. Or we should. There was that one I didn't scan, and I was like, what the heck is good? It was some meditation thing. I was like, what is this? I can't, like, it was funny. And then I scanned it and I went, oh, that's why. Okay.
Yeah, that's why. It was weird. Yeah. But you can totally scan stuff. That's one of the things that we talk about.
So being aware, being present, non-judging, and being fearless, everyone. Like, let's just, you know, be fearless, because as I always say, the time on this earth is not that long in the big scheme of things. And you really want to be able to be you and be real and not worry what other people think. It's so much more enjoyable that way.
Well, you can't, the reason that I think this is so important, and I think this is the whole reason why Courageous Vulnerability was born, was that you can't ever get where you want to go in any kind of reasonable fashion if you don't know where you're starting.
Right.
And so many people are trying to be somewhere or something that they're not. And they're not able to get where they really want to be with it because they're not really honoring where they're at.
Right.
Right. So when we talk about vulnerability, it's not really about, to me anyway, it's not really about like just sharing my deepest secrets and sharing all my dirty laundry with the world. Like that's not what vulnerability is about at all. Like if it has a purpose, I'll do it. But it's not about it's not about doing it just because.
Right.
You know, it needs to have a purpose behind it. Vulnerability is the willingness to do that.
Right.
You know, regardless of what people might say. And the fact of the matter is, like, you come back to the intellect and the world that we live in, and people will judge you.
Yes.
It's what human beings do. Human beings judge. So if you go out there and get super vulnerable without properly assessing that, like you very well likely could get hurt doing that.
Right.
That is not the proper use of vulnerability.
Not the proper use.
Yeah. And then you're more damaged, and then you go deeper into hiding.
Right.
So what it does is actually, and this is one of the things, I don't want to go too off on this, but now you got me on a roll. Like I started kind of mellow on this one, and now I'm getting cranked up about it.
Welcome to our world, people.
Because now you think about it in the healing context of like okay, you put it in the healing context. When we talk about healing, and people, you know, they go for this big cathartic experience, right? I'm going to share all my secrets and talk about all my deepest and darkest and everything like that. And then they get it out there for a second. Right? But then comes the judgment. They call it, there's sometimes like a vulnerability hangover too, where you start the self-judgment and all these other things, and you don't have the container or the capacity to actually, or the tools to actually resolve it.
Right.
And it goes right back in, and then it gets deeper embedded.
Right.
And so if you looked at it on a physical layer, that's what happens when you try to suppress symptoms. You know, if you look at it on an emotional layer, that's exactly what happens when you put yourself out there and you get really vulnerable without using your intellect, and then you get super hurt doing that.
Right.
You know, you don't want to build a thicker skin.
Right.
You know, that's not the goal. The goal is to be able to do that and to not be agitated by it, so that you're totally clear. And it happens on the mental level when you get shut down, and then it's not safe to share your ideas and share your thoughts. So it's the opposite of healing. It's actually the worst thing you could do.
Yeah. Great point.
So
better share that with many personal growth training.
There you have it. There you have. I got on a little bit of a rant there, so thanks.
Yep. So honesty, courageous vulnerability, radical authenticity, and be fearless, everyone. It's time to live life. It's time to really live and not let life tell us how to be.
You get to decide.
You get to decide. Thank you so much for being here. Any questions for next week's shows, just send them in to info@sourcemovement.com. We so appreciate you. Please share this with someone that you love, and much, much love and appreciation.
Namaste.